Adat Israel presenta
Shalom, shalom. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah, and we're bringing this a special Torah lesson and teaching that our conference about the YOM HAKIPPURIM, which is the Day of the Atonement. The Day of the Atonement is very important because it really gives us the idea of how we can humble ourselves in a way that our Creator wants us to. And one of the ways that we can humble ourselves is by doing fasting, to deny ourselves in such a way that we have to understand that that humiliation, humbleness is one of the things that the Creator Yahweh Sebaot want the humanity to have. And sadly, we don't. So today is one of those days that we call upon ourselves to, according to the Torah, to do so and to understand, because it is a depth, insight, understanding of how this day shall be. But it's different levels that we will see combined with the Parashat Metzorah that we studied yesterday according to the Torah calendar. And it has all synchronized. It's very special, very beautiful. So let's get into that. Once again, be patient with me because I'm doing this with a lot of things going, but I do want to make it, definitely special for all of us. So once again, let's get into this. And so it says here, Parashat Metzorah, our Creator wants us to have this understanding. And let's go into Vayikra or Leviticus 14 verse 2. They shall be the Torah of Metzorah, of the skin disease, for the day of the skin cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, or the Kohen Gadol. Look at what it says here. One of the things, very important things to understand, is that our Creator wants us to understand why He is doing all this. The skin disease has something that has a lot to do with death and life, especially back in those days. Remember, back in those days, any kind of disease pretty much was treated not very mildly, because they didn't have the means to treat that kind of disease. Our Creator gave special knowledge and super knowledge, advanced knowledge to our forefathers, Israel, to treat this kind of diseases, but they had to go according to the Torah. Mostly, all these kind of diseases have a lot to do with the inner person. Let's go to the book of Mark 140. It says this: the leper came to him. It's translated leprosy. It says, leper came to him, calling upon him, kneeling down to him, to Yahushua, and saying to him, if you desire, you are able to make me clean. And Yahushua moved him with compassion, and stretched out his hand and touched them, and said to him, I desire it, be cleansed. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. And having strictly warned him, he immediately sent them away, and said to him, see, say none to anyone, and go show yourself to the high priest, to the Kohen Gadol, and offer for yourself cleansing what Moshe ordered as a witness to them. This is very important because remember, Yahushua, being the living Torah, he had to tell them what was written on the Torah, and being obedient to the Torah, he needed to have the leprosy checked by the Kohen Gadol, to the high priest. And because remember this, that the Kohen Gadol, or the high priest, was making as a physician. So being as a physician, he needed to make sure that all this was according to the Torah. The Kohen Gadol was doing as a priest, of course, with the high priest, to do the sacrificial lambs and so forth. But at the same time, he was doing as a physician. So this is very important indeed. Now, let's move on and look at what it says here in the next verse. In this is kind of disease that is been going through time. This disease has a lot to do with the skin. Sometimes the skin fall off completely. It was a very terrible disease, even to death. So let's look up a few things. 7 things of a skin disease in the Torah. The first one is a slander. When somebody slanders somebody else, multiplying the things that are not even that, meaning a lying, in other words. The second was shedding of blood. The shedding of blood was murdering somebody, plotting and murdering somebody. But this one goes into the deeper level. The third is vain oath. When somebody was making an oath that wasn't actually real. Like you've seen a lot of people where they always making oaths like, I swear to you, I swear with my mom, I swear. And there is not even true. Fourth is incest. We all know about this, the immoral situations that they have encountered in many of the nations. Israel was warned not to do so, just like in the nations. In arrogance, that's one of the biggest, even today. Arrogance, when people think that they are somebody, and even if they are, but they exalt themselves, the haughtiness of their hearts take them to that level. Number 6 is rob the neighbor. When you steal your neighbor, when you steal something that does not belong to you, our Creator said that's totally wrong. And the 7th is envy. When you have envy towards your brother or your neighbor, that goes very important too. And if you notice, all that, it has a lot to do with the matter of the heart. The word safar in Hebrew means bird, fowl, or sparrow. And it has a lot to do with what we will see soon. But I want you to go into Psalms 102 verse 7. It says, I have watched, and I am as a bird alone in the housetop. Why? Because when it was a bird, this has a lot to do with the parashat and what we're learning today. And remember that in the Torah it says one bird was let go and the other one was sacrificed. We will see about that. Leviticus 14 verse 4. Then the priest shall command, and he shall take for him who is to be cleansed, he says, 2 live clean birds, and cedar and scarlet and hyssop. It has a lot to do with the sacrificial. These elements had a lot to do with the cleansing, with to be pure. Verse 5, and the priest shall command, and he shall kill one of the birds, see that, in an earthen vessel over running water. That means living water. This has a lot to do with the cleansing process. But out of the 2 birds, one was killed. This is very important because this has a lot to do with the Mashiach. 14 verse 6, let him take the live bird and the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop, and then dip them, that means all of them, including the bird, in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. See, do you see that this was a process that needed to be done? So the person who had leprosy needed to go through that process of cleansing. Now, this is huge. This is very important because without this, the person could not be healed. Now, do you see that how the process was? But once again, this might seem like, okay, this is just all sacrifices and so forth. But we have to understand the deeper level of the Torah. The deeper level of the Torah has a lot to do with the Mashiach. The Mashiach is very involved in these sacrificial processes. So let's go back, and it says here, the next verse says, verse 7, and shall sprinkle it 7 times on him, on the leper, or the person who has Adat, who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, or the Adat, and shall pronounce him clean. And he shall let the live bird loose. Do you see that? You should let the live bird loose in the open field. That means one was slaughtered, was killed, and the other one was needed to go through a process, and it was let go on the open field. This has a lot to deeper meaning on the Mashiach. Verse 8, 8 of Bereshit or Genesis. Then he should send out a dove from him to see if the waters have receded from the face of the ground or the face of the earth. This has a lot to do with trying to find if there was life. Do you see that? One, he said he sent out a live dove, a live bird, to see what was the purpose of it, to see if the bird find life, if it was the ground was dry. You see that? So this has a lot to do with an example why the bird was let go. Very important. Psalms 38 verse 1. My loved ones and my friends stand back from my plague. Do you see that? And my neighbors stand far away. Do you see that? The implications here of prophecy. This has a lot to do with the Mashiach. Our Jewish brothers that believe that the Mashiach is the leper. You see that? The leper. And it is all over the scriptures. It's in the Torah. Do you see that? Our Mashiach born our sickness. Our Mashiach born our sins. Do you see that? In Isaiah 53, talks about how our Mashiach became the leprosy, became the one who took upon himself all the sins, all the illness, all the sickness, everything upon him, and he didn't have to. Lamentations 3:28. You see the implications of the Mashiach and the Father Abba. It says, let him, which the Mashiach, sit alone and be silent, just like the Mashiach, because he who the Father has lay on him. Do you see that? What lay on him? All the burden that we supposed to carry. Now, let's see the implications on the prophecy of the Mashiach and the two birds. The dying bird announces the death of the Mashiach. Do you see that? The bird that is released announces the resurrection of the Mashiach. And the entire purification process of Sa'ara, or the skin disease, is related to the Mashiach and the cleansing process. It all has a lot to do with the Mashiach and his people, Israel. Now, the cedar wood that we saw earlier on the Torah, it says, indicates that the death of the Mashiach has to occur where? On a tree. You see that? It has a lot to do with, there is more to it, but I wanted to just to resume to this. Now, the word for Yonah or Yonah means dove. Do you see that? It's not even it's not a pure coincidence, because coincidence doesn't exist. It's not even a kosher word. Yonah means dove. Let's look at what Yahushua says about Yonah, which is dove. 1240 of Shem Tov Matityahu, the Hebrew Matthew. For as Yonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the great fish, look what it says, so shall the son of Adam, or the son of Ben Adam. Yonah, you see that? Dove. So this dove, which is the Mashiach, be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So you see that? The implications here, the similitudes, very important, because our Mashiach took upon himself the leprosy, the leper. Look at what it says in 1 Corinthians 15:14. If the Mashiach has not been raised, then our proclaiming is empty. Our preaching is empty, and your belief or your emunah or your faith is also empty. So once again, we see here a very important thing for us to understand, that just as we see the Mashiach taking upon himself the sickness, taking upon every little thing that you see on the Torah, being the dove, and you see the Yonah being the dove too. We see the foreshadow of the Torah on the Mashiach, which is very important. Let's continue on and to see something a little bit more deeper into our Torah study. Look at what it says here In and this is something very important because this has a lot to do with the crimson. If you notice here, the scientific name for crimson worm, which is what you see, the scarlet, is Coccus ilicis or ilicis or Kermes ilicis. Now they see this crimson worm or is very compound on the nature, but it has a lot to do with what the Torah and also the Nevi'im, the prophets, talk about. So let's get into that. The crimson worm, Coccus ilicis, is a very special worm that looks more like a grub than a worm, or groove than a worm. When it is time for the crimson worm mother or female to have children, it does it only once in their life. Do you see that? It finds the trunk of a tree, a wooden fence, or a stick. Then he joins his body so that the wood, it makes a crimson shell. She sticks so strongly and permanently to the wood that you can never remove the shell without completely destroying her body or killing her. Do you see that? Now you understand? You're getting the picture now? The crimson worm then lays his eggs under his body in protective shell. Then the baby worms or larvae hatch. They remain under the shell. Not only does the mother's body provide protection for their babies, but it also gives them food. Do you see that? Do you start getting the picture? Babies feed in their mother's living body. And after 3 days, and this is not made up, this is just the nature of that worm. After 3 days, the dead body of the mother worm crimson loses its crimson color and becomes white wax that falls to the ground like a snow. Do you see that? This is amazing. This is amazing of the nature, and this is a picture of the Mashiach, the death and the resurrection. Do you see that? Now let's look at what Yeshayahu or Isaiah 1:18 says. Come now and let us reason together, says Yahweh. Though your sins are like a scarlet, do you see that? They shall be like a white snow. Though they are red like a crimson, they shall be as wool. Do you see that? Now they understand why that passages on the Nevi'im, on the prophet, talks about the scarlet and the snow and the wool, right? Because there is such a thing as the nature that we saw in few seconds ago. Now let's look at what the word for Shani means. Shani means properly is an insect or color. Do you see that? The color that gives this insect as a stuffed dye with it, what is called today the scarlet or the crimson. Now let's look at the word tola. Tola means is basically the maggot or the worm, the crimson grub. That is what is called the tola. You see that? Those two things are very important on the Torah and the scriptures. Now let's look at what the Mashiach becomes like a worm. Do you see that? Psalms 22 verse 6. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised by the people. Exactly what happened to our Mashiach, Yahushua, Rebbe Mashiach. He went through all that. He was despised completely. He was looked at from every aspect of every man like nothing, despised by the people. They spit on him. They hit him. They did all kinds of stuff to him, and it was a reproach of man. Look at what Yeshayahu, Isaiah 41:14. Do not fear, you worm, Jacob. It also talks. It's a allusion to the Mashiach. 25 verse 6 of Job. How much less man a maggot and a son of man a worm. Do you see that? This is also a foreshadow also the Mashiach. Let's look at what the hyssop it is. Let's look at what it is in in Psalms 51 verse 7. cleanse me with hyssop. Do you see that? I am clean, wash me, and I am whiter than snow. What does hyssop? What the hyssop does is you can rub it, you can smell it. Today you can do research what the hyssop does. It has a very purification antibacterial soaps. They use it, and out of the 3 elements that you saw here, 2 are used in the antibacterial soaps that you buy and that you use every day. Ezekiel 16 verse 6, then I passed by you and saw you talking Yahweh to Israel, and you trampled down your own blood. And I said to you, in your blood, live. And I said to you, in your blood, live. Do you see that? Here is talking something about our forefathers when they were young, when they were in Israel, in Misraim, when they were in Egypt. And I do want you to see me so you understand what I'm talking about. Here, in this verse, the Yahweh is talking to our forefathers when they were in Egypt, when they were just barely starting as a nation, and when the Creator have compassion to them, and they remember the crying and the weeping in the slavery, and Yahweh said, "Well, I'm gonna take you out from there. I'm gonna do all these things to you. I'm gonna adorn you. I'm gonna give you the Torah." We will see these verses, but I want you to understand that in their youth, remember when an adolescent becomes an adolescent from a childhood, they go through that process of adulthood, right? So they need to go through their puberty, right? So in a female side, they need to have their period so they can be cleansed. So that's a part of the purification for a female. So let's see what our Creator talks about, and so we can have an idea of these things and what the Torah and the Nevi'im talks about this. It has a lot to do with it. Look what it says here, 36:16 of Ezekiel. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwell in their own land, they defile themselves by their own ways and their own deeds. To me, their ways were like what? Like nidah. Do you see that? Like uncleanness of a woman in her monthly period. Do you see that? That's how bad it got. Their deeds were just like that. It was uncleanness. It was nasty what they did. Let's go back to what we were talking earlier. Ezekiel 16 verse 6. I have let you grow like a plant in the field. You are grown and are great, and you have come in the finest ornaments. Breasts were formed. You see that? How they were in the youth. You see that? Your hair grew, and you were naked and bare. Verse 8. Again I passed by you and looked upon you and saw that your time was time of love. And I spread my skirt over you, my talit, in other words, and I cover your nakedness, and I swear an oath to you and enter into a covenant, a brit. You see that as the Torah with you, and you became mine, declares Yahweh. Do you see that? Verse 9, and I wash you with water. Remember what the Torah says, that 3 days before the Shavuot, they needed to be washed. Do you see that? And I wash off your blood, and I anointed you with oil. Do you see that? With the Ruach HaKodesh. And I dress you with an embroidery work, and gave you sandals of leather. And I wrap you in a fine linen, and cover you with silk. That's the Torah right there. Verse 13, let's jump there on 13. Thus you were adorned with gold and silver, and your dress was of fine and linden and silk, and embroidered with cloth. You ate fine flour and honey and oil, and you were exceedingly pretty and became fit for royalty. I mean, this is something amazing what the Yahweh did to our forefathers. Verse 14. Your name went among the nations because of your loveliness, for it was perfect. And my splendor, my kabod, which I have put on you, declare Yahweh. Do you see that? So in other words, the nation of Israel, our forefathers, became a great nation because Yahweh did that to them, to our forefathers. This is a hyssop. If you notice a hyssop, this is one of the ways how they did the hyssop. Remember in Pesach, they grabbed the hyssop and they dip the blood and they put it in the dentals of their houses. That's how they did it. First off, now let's compare from cedar wood to the hyssop, which is the tallest wood, tallest trees to the smallest. First of Kings 4:33. From the cedar tree of Lebanon, even to the hyssop, which is smallest, that it springs out of the wall. So we're comparing one to another. First of Corinthians, look at comparing that to our Mashiach. 2 Corinthians 8:9. For you know the favor of our Master Yahushua Mashiach, that being rich, you see that tall cedar, he became poor, he became hyssop for your sake, that you might become rich through his poverty. Do you see that? Becoming healed, in other words. You see, this is the cedar, very tall, one of the tallest trees in the world. Do you see the hyssop? This is one of the smallest. And we're going to see an example of this with Mashiach. Gives an example of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Yahweh. Look what it says, 13:31 of Rapha'Yah. Another parable, another mashal, he put before them, saying, the kingdom of Yahweh, the kingdom of heaven, is like a mustard seed, which is a man took and sowed in the field, which indeed is less than all the seeds. But when it grows, it becomes the greater than all the plants and becomes like a tree. Exactly what the Mashiach was. He was like nothing. And at age of 30, he became a high priest. Do you see that? He became anointed by the Father. And so that the birds of the heavens and became dwell in his branches, became a dwelling just for all of us. Let's look at another verse. Look what it says here in Hosea 2:18. In that day I will make a covenant, a breed for them and the beasts of the field. You see that same thing as we were talking earlier. And with the birds of the heavens, and with the creeping creatures of the ground, when bow and sword and battle, and I break them from the earth, and I will make them lying down on safety. Do you see that? That's how our Creator did through the Mashiach. Now, the Paramaduma, the red heifer, here we're seeing something very important with the red cow. It has a lot to do with what we're talking about, and ultimately with YOM HAKIPPURIM, because it's coming. Numbers, or Bat Mimbar 19:12. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the third day. Do you see that? And on the seventh day he is clean. In other words, he needed to be cleansed on the third day. But on the seventh day, he is to be clean. But look what it says. But if he does not clean himself on the third day, then on the seventh he shall not be clean. He's not going to be clean. He needs to be purified on the third, so that way he can be cleansed on the seventh. This is a prophetic of the all 6,000 year millennium of mankind. And this is very important. From the fall of Adam became death. He became unclean. That was the first day. Then we jump to the Mashiach, the purification, on the third day. The death and the resurrection on the third day. You see that? And then ultimately, if you're not purified on this day, brothers and sisters, if you're not purified on this day, on the third day, then you will not be purified completely on the seventh day. And the seventh day is the healing. That means when the Mashiach returns, you will not make it. Definitely you will not make it. You need to be purified on this day, on the third day, so you can be here on the healing on the seventh day. That's what the Torah says. Look at first the Kepha of Peter 3:21, which figure now it also save us. Look at what it says. The Tevilah, or the immersion, that's what it is. That's what save us. The Tevilah, not putting away of the filth of the flesh, but the answers of a good conscience towards Yahweh through the resurrection of Yahushua Mashiach. Do you see that? Now we understand. Now we're getting the full picture of YOM HAKIPPURIM. Now we understand the whole picture of Yom HaKippurim. Now we understand better why Yom HaKippurim has a lot to do with it. But at the same time, we understand that we as a person, we as people, as whole, and also as individual, we need to make a change every day. It's not enough. You go one level. It's not enough. You need to continue another level and so forth until the Olam Haba, until the Mashiach comes, until the everlasting life. You have to. We have to. We must. We never say we know it all because we don't. We don't know anything, really. We know very little, and yet we don't know anything. Let's jump into the rest. And it says here, Zechariah 13:1, in that day a fountain shall be opened, it says here, and for the house of Dawi, for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and what else? And uncleanness. The sin and uncleanness. In that day, brothers and sisters, Yahweh is going to make that happen. That day is coming. But we must understand we need to make a change. We need to be through that process of purification. If we don't, we're going to be left out. I mean, it's simple as that. We're going to be left out, and it's all up to us. It's a matter of choice, brothers and sisters. It's a matter of choice. So the yoke that we carry we've been carrying that yoke for a long time. Is the yoke of sin. Lamentations 1:14 says, the yoke of my transgressions has been bound by his hand. You see that? Proverbs 5:22, and he's caught in the course of his sins. Do you see that? Entrapment in the crookedness. We all come to that point, brothers and sisters. Today is the day that we need to ask our Creator, because from the moment that we accept the Mashiach and we do Tevilah, that's the process where the Pesach takes over. But throughout the year, and I want you to see me when I say this, throughout the year we make errors. We make errors. This day is the time that we need to amend these errors. This is the time that we need to ask the Creator, I'm sorry if I did anything that I didn't know I was doing. And that's why if you go into Psalms 19 verse I think it's 18 or 17, it says free me or spare me from the unintentional sins, unintentional errors. We all make unintentional errors, and so we need to ask the Creator today to help us to overcome these burdens. So let's continue. The Mashiach only once charged the sins of Israel. Only once. Hebrews 9:27, as it awaits men to die once, after the judgment, so also the Mashiach, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, shall appear the second time, apart from sin, for those waiting for him unto deliverance. And do you see that? Unto deliverance. Deliverance that our Mashiach comes, only is going to do it one time. He died once, he's going to come and deliver once again. Yeshayahu, which is going to read 2 verses. 53 verse 4, truly he has borne our sickness and carried our pains, yet we reckon him stricken, is smitten by our Creator, and afflicted, because he poured out his being unto death. He was counted on the transgressions, he bore the sins of many, and he made intercessions for the transgressors. We have part of that. We take part of that. The Mashiach came to do all of that just for you and me and for the rest of the Israel. We just need to acknowledge that. Leviticus or Vayikra 14 verse 3, and the priest shall go out of the camp And the priest shall look and see if the leprosy or the skin disease or the Sahara is healed in the leper. He needs to go outside. Who? The priest. Exactly the way the Mashiach did. 1 Thessalonians 4:7. For Yahweh did not call us to uncleanness. You see that? But to Kadushah, to be set apart. Now let's look at what Nidah in Hebrew is the equal to the Greek. We're going to see it. Nidah is to be separated, to menstruation, but it means also separation. Look at the equal in Greek is akatarthia. Akatarthia means uncleanness. Exactly what we are looking at. Now let's go into next with the 10 lepers. The 10 lepers that we see on Luke 17. We're just going to resume to this. We know that they were healed, right? But something happened. The 10 lepers were healed. But look at what something happened. Verse 16. 7:16 of Luke. And he fell on his face at his feet, thanking him. You see, that's one of them. They all supposed to come back and say thank you, right? But one of them returned, and he happens to be a Samaritan. And he was a Samaritan. And answering, Joshua said, We're not 10 cleans, but where are the 9? For what did they separate that they shall not come and give praise to Yahweh? Only this man did, who is from the foreign people. He happens to be Samaritan, but Samaritan happens to be half Hebrew, half the nations. In other words, he was in the northern kingdom. He was from the house of Israel. And he said to him, Raise up, go. Your emunah, your faith has given your life. And being questioned by the Pharisees as to when the kingdom of Yahweh comes, he answered to them and said, The kingdom of Yahweh does not come with the observation, nor will they said, Lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of Yahweh is within the midst, within you. And he said to the disciples, The day will come when we will long to see these days of man, the Son of Man, and will not see. In other words, all this happened, all has a lot to do with us today. Those 10 lepers happens to be the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, the house of Israel, Ephraim, you and I. But the problem today, brothers and sisters, is that we are ungrateful. We come to the Hebrew roots, we come to acknowledge the Mashiach, we come to acknowledge the Torah, but we are so ungrateful. Today we are so ungrateful. Yahweh has done so many things to us. He cleans us, He did a lot, He restored us, and yet we don't give thanks. We're so ungrateful. We don't realize how ungrateful we are, but we are. Today we need to understand that. We need to realize that we've done wrong, that we are ungrateful. We need to be okay, square with our Abba Kadosh, Yahweh. We need to make those amends. If we don't do, then we will be continued just like the other 9. But one was grateful. We need to be that person. We need to be that, from that, like the Samaritan. Look at Zechariah 8:22. Says, and many people of strong nations shall come to see Yahweh Sebaot in Yerushalayim, to seek the favor of the face of Yahweh. Look at verse 23, striking. So say Yahweh Sebaot, in those days, how many men? 10 men out of all languages of the nations. How many nations? All the 70 nations. But 10 men, 10 tribes. You see that? The northern kingdom, you and I, will seize wing. What wing? The talit, the wings, the seats. The word is kanap. And out of the garments of a man, of Yahudi, saying, Let us go with you, for we have heard that the Almighty is with you. Do you see that? Very important. Wayikra 23:28. And you do not work in the same day, for it is Yom HAKIPPURIM, and to make kapad, you see that? Atonement for you before the Almighty. This has a lot to do with today. Today is the day of the atonement. Today is the day we have to reconcile ourselves with Abba Kadosh, the wrong that we have done. Look at what it says. We almost done, brothers and sisters. Revelation 11:15. In the seventh cherub, the seventh angel blew the shofar, and there were great rumblings and the thunder, saying, the kingdoms of the world have become our Almighty, even his Mashiach, and he shall reign forever and ever. You see that? Which shofar? With horn of ram. He says the seventh. You see that? This day, and believe me, that day is going to be on this day, on Yom HaKippurim. That day is going to be on this day, on the Yom HaKippurim. Yishayahu, Isaiah 34, verse 2. For the displeasure of Yahweh is against the nations, the Goyim, the Gentiles, and his wrath against all their divisions. He shall put them under their ban, and shall give them over the slaughter. Do you see that? Now, before we go on, I want you to see me, because I do want to make, I want to point something out. In the day of Yom HaKippurim, Yom Kippur, they were two goats. One that was kept, that was for Yahweh, and the other one needs to be, one that was for Yahweh, and the other one needs to be let go, right? But one needs to be slaughtered. Just like this parasha Metzorah, two birds, right? One was slaughtered and the other one let go. Same thing. But we have to understand something very important. And this implies with the whole world, with the whole Gentile world. The day is going to come, just like the Torah says. Remember that the past repeats itself. The past, Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, so what it was, it will be. The past repeats itself. Just like the Yom Kippur, one was a slaughter, so when the Mashiach comes, the nations will be as a slaughtering as well. Like it will be like a slaughtering sacrifice. And this is very important. Once again, let me repeat it. Just like a Yom HaKippurim, in this day, one goat was slaughtered, one sacrifice was a slaughter. Then, so when the Mashiach comes, the nations that did not listen to the Torah will be slaughtered, and we will see what the Nevi'im says. And I want you to see this and pay much attention to this, because this is very scary stuff. For Isaiah 34 verse 3, and their slain shall be thrown out, and their stench rise from their corpses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. You see that? For my sword shall be drenched in their heavens. Look, it comes down in the dome, and on the peoples of my curse for judgment. And the sword of Yahweh shall be filled with blood. You see that? And shall be made overflowing with fatness, and with the blood of the lambs. You see that? How he's comparing? And goats, and the fat of the kidneys of the rams for Yahweh. Do you see that? This is something very scary, but it's in the Torah as well. Verse 7, and the wild oxen shall be down with them, and the young bulls and with the bulls, and their land shall be drenched with blood. You see that? And their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day, do you see that? What day was it? The day of vengeance of Yahweh, of the year of recompense for the cuss of Zion. Do you see that? This day is going to, just like the day of Jubilee, is going to be a Jubilee. That's the first one, okay? It's going to be a day of Jubilee. And also it's going to be a Yom HaKippurim. The shofar used to be, and every Jubilee, the shofar had to be blown. It's on the Torah. And also you look at what it says, the day of vengeance and the year of recompense. Why? Because of the cause of Zion. Because they have done to Zion something. Look at Isaiah 61 verse 2. When the Mashiach came, he fulfilled that. But look at what it says here, 61 verse 2. To proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh. That's why Mashiach read it once in the synagogue. And look what it says, in the day of vengeance of our Almighty, to comfort what? All who mourn. Do you see that? Look what it says, verse 3, to appoint unto those who mourn where? In Zion. Do you see that? To those who mourn in Zion. Brothers and sisters, it is my pleasure to bring this to you. It's the day of Yom HaKippurim. Let's take advantage of this beautiful day. The rest of the feast, our festivals are coming, but today is the day that we need to be set square with our Almighty. And that's what this day is for. That's what the fasting is for. And believe me, it helps us so much that to grow spiritually. And once again, I thank you very much. And hopefully our Creator can give us more knowledge and wisdom to understand these things. Once again, I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah, and shalom to all of you from Adat Israel. Thank you.
Adat Israel presenta